So I'm reading about, I remembered, I was journaling this morning and kind of remembered this, something I read several years ago that has always stayed with me about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how he got that from, that understanding of human needs and what they are, and from the Blackfoot Indians in, I forgot which state, but he stayed with a tribe of Blackfoot Indians for 6 weeks and was so amazed to discover that they were, in his words, 80 to 90% of the tribe were actualized, self-actualized, in contrast with, he said, 5 to 10% of Americans or white folks being self-actualized. And self-actualized was something that he defined. I actually wrote it down. The desire to become more and more of what one is, to become everything that one is capable of being. Although I don't think that's actually how they define it. I think they would define it the second way. Someone who is completely developed and who has arrived, which I know is kind of vague, but those were the two definitions in the article I was reading about this that was put together by. It's interesting because you think about now, and none of us, so few of us are kind of self-actualized in that way. We're all seeking to become something and to gain belonging, to gain things from outside of ourselves. And none of us feel like we have arrived. None of us have that feeling of contentment that we have arrived, and we are. And the Blackfoot Indians, now Maslow defined that as the top of the hierarchy of individual human needs. But the reason that I looked up this article was that for the Blackfoot Indians, they defined it as the starting point. So the way that they understood it was that when you're born, you are born already self-actualized. And they treated children the same as everyone else. So they were taken care of, and their basic, their needs, physical security, their whatever needs were coming up for them, were met, but also they were engaged in participating in the community, participating in rituals, in ceremonies, in helping to care for the community too. And they were also treated as independent, given full freedom to say what they needed, to do what they wanted. And as such, what Maslow kind of observed while he was staying with the Blackfoot Indians for that 6 weeks was that they would, they'd listen to their elders, and they were eager to take in, wisdom from their elders, but they were also very free-spirited and independent, and they had, like he said, almost all of the folks in the tribe had this sense of individual, that's the part that's interesting to me, individual self-actualization. And now, of course that comes from, you see that coming from community, from being part of a tribe that treats you with respect and with the dignity inherent to someone, that's owed to someone who is seen as fully self-actualized, a full person, being treated with that dignity. However, it's interesting because it's also treated as a starting point. before you ever received that dignified treatment and the respect from the people around you, and before you ever received, your needs being met by others, and before you ever received feeling the belonging of being fully part of a tribe and people wanting to help you to be your best self, whether that's by ceremony or ritual or going on like a vision quest. Like before you ever received any of that, you were self-actualized. And I think a lot of modern day scholars talk about the thing that follows from self-actualization for the Blackfoot Indians, which is community actualization, which I think is this key thing that a lot of us are striving for right now. A lot of people my age, a lot of people younger than me, a lot of people older than me too, but we're striving for something better. Because we can feel how broken a lot of the things around us are. And so we're striving for this community actualization. What can we be? What can this society be? What can this world be? And a lot of the scholars who've studied the Blackfoot Indians and learned about them and understood some of how they have lived have really focused on that community aspect, which I think is extremely important. And I also fully know that I don't have a full understanding of a group of people that I've never personally come into contact with, or I've done a lot of reading, and that's pretty much it. And I've done a lot of self-introspection too, so that is also really important. It's not just like an up here thing. It's like an awareness thing, a gaining awareness of where you are and who you are. But from what I'm seeing, something like it's not that it's just about community actualization. And actually, this is really especially important to me because I've spent a lot of, I'm 32, and I got out of college 10 years ago, 2015. It's now 2025. And my goal was to make things better, because a lot of, my time growing up, I felt like I did not fit, like things did not fit me, like my needs were not getting met. Like when I went to college, I felt like I was so critical, oh my gosh, of everything. I just could see all the ways in which things were like wrong or just not going in the direction that I thought that they should. Like people were so isolated from each other. People were so competitive over grades. People were so not in a good place mentally and like emotionally, and they would party so hard on the weekends. I mean, I did go to a very pressure-filled environment. I was at Cornell, and also, I'm sure I was missing a lot of what was right with my environment, because I think I've been primed. I don't know. I think in some ways my childhood primed me to like really, really have high expectations, and to expect the most out of everyone and everything else. And so it's it was always very obvious to me when something was not meeting those high expectations. So I was never satisfied with how things were. Where was I going with this? Okay, I remember what I was gonna say. I was really focused ever since I was in college and feeling really dissatisfied with everything. And leaving college and trying to find something that felt right, a place that did meet my expectations, a community that did meet my expectations. I I was always focused and not finding that. I was always focused my whole adult life on community actualization, on making my community better. And I don't know if I fully realized it. Maybe I did. But the reason I wanted to do that is so that I could become self-actualized, because I knew you do need, like, I thought I knew that you needed community in order to become self-actualized. But the interesting thing, and that's what Maslow's hierarchy of needs definitely would agree with that. And it's a very individual focused, like a lot of people have said, individual focused hierarchy of needs. It starts with your basic needs, your security for, like, getting your basic needs met more long term, like physical needs, like having a house, having clothing, having food, not being safe in a basic way, not always at threat of violence. And then belonging and love needs. There you go. Community, esteem needs, achievement needs, and then self-actualization comes, after you've got the other ones met. And what the Blackfoot Indians say is that you start with self-actualization. So before anything else. And it's such a freaking interesting concept to, like, feel into, because if you start with self-actualization when you're born, then it's always in you. And the approach to education is that it's nurturing and calling out of you that which is already in you. Like, you are imbued with a spark of, and this is going to sound so spiritual, and it is, like, spirituality is just understanding. It's like having a framework for how we see life. That's what spirituality is. So all of us have a spirituality. And what the Blackfoot Indians felt was that we are all born with a spark of the divine in us, and we are born actualized, naturally wise, fully ourselves, and that is what needs to be nurtured. And it's so interesting because so few of us are that now, or present as that. Like, we're very, very focused. I mean, for the last 10 years, I've been focused obsessively on making my community better. And why? It was because I wanted to, like, get certain needs met that I felt like I needed met to survive. And that is important. Like, our survival needs are definitely key. And I can't underscore how much the survival instinct is what got us here, as humans, and how present it is in some moments in our lives to where we have to focus on that if we want to stay alive, and staying alive is what we want most. And that we do have certain very, very strong needs for love and connection, and for recognition of our contributions. And they're very strong. And I feel like I'm shaking the camera, which is annoying. Is my hands shaking? Okay, anyway. But I want to say what I want to say, so pardon the shaking if there is some. But it's wild because we do live in a backwards world. We live in a world that is very defensive, and in which people attack in an attempt to defend themselves. And you see that everywhere, and you see it in wealth accumulation, and you see it in it's all people trying to achieve this like feeling of security and safety. And what I'll say is that is something that like a group of people that I really admire are some of these like monks that are in some of these countries in Southeast Asia, who they spend so much time in stillness and looking inward that they become able to truly tell what is a need and what is a want, even an immense want, even a want that is causing, immense pain to not have met. They develop this relationship with pain and with like being alive that allows, it lets go of control over emotions, because we don't have control over emotions, but it allows, it allows those emotions instead of fighting them, instead of trying to control our circumstances. And in doing that, like, people gain so much selfhood. There's like this well-being. It's like a prize that you get for not being distracted by the things that we think that we need. And learning what we really, really do need in the most basic sense. But this ability to have like this selfhood of, I'm going to decide what I do. I'm going to decide what I do next. Feeling into and being aware of maybe like an intense desire for connection or to be seen or whatever. And being aware that I can't control my outside world. And being aware that everything that I need to bring my aspect of actualization to the community is within me, and I just find that so incredibly inspiring, because we can't control the community that we're in, but and I think for a lot of us this really does require, and I know we've got a society that's all about movement and action, but since the pandemic I've been feeling like this huge call to stillness, and it can be really painful sometimes to just sit still, and it can feel impossible, like I need to do something. And then sometimes we have obligations, things that we feel compelled to do. But in those moments of stillness that we do get, like we get a prize for them. We get a present. We get the present of, oh God, that's the pun, the present of awareness, and more deeply realizing what we're going after when we are moving and rushing, and we get to like come back to this place start to come back to this place over time where we are already actualized. Like we can trust ourselves. We can trust the needs and the wants that we have, the deeper ones, we can find our way back to that. And from there, naturally, what happens is that we have an influence on the things around us from that place of actualization, and our community becomes more actualized. And it's crazy because we're taught to look everywhere outside ourselves, to get educated, to learn from other people's wisdom. And that is really important, especially for skills, for learning the stories of those who came before us. But in actuality, most of the people around us are not in that state. And their motivations come from a desire to get to this state of well-being and peace and contentment that comes from a feeling of belonging or security or recognition that is putting the cart before the horse, kind of. You know, it's looking for things from the outside that we are not, that's not the starting place. The starting place is inside. And that's just my interpretation of all of this, but it feels really grounding and helpful to me in this moment. So I wanted to share it with you today, and if it even helps somebody else to hear, it helps me to say, so it feels good. So I thank you for listening. I hope you have a good one.